time there was a plague, and Moses went to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's answer was no. And each and every time, I'm sure if I was one of the children of Israel, because you've got to remember, they're in Egypt where all this is going on, so it affects them too. I'm like, Moses, have you flipped your lid? Do you know what you're doing here? This is not a comfortable situation, and we're already slaves. But the point being, Moses was obedient. And even though this was dragging out through a long period of time in Egypt, trying to get the people released, even when Moses had said, go get it done. Because see, when Moses told the people that he'd get ready, he was going to get them out of Egypt, I think they thought it was going to happen at the snap of a finger, but it didn't happen that way. What's that lesson for you and I? That lesson for you and I is sometimes when you're in your Egypt of your life, if you will rely on God and understand that God is in control of your life, you will come through it. It may not be overnight. It may not be right this minute, but it will be in God's time, in God's way. Because, folks, I'm here to tell you something. There's no matter what you do or do not do as a Christian, God will get the honor and glory, one way or the other. And we have to realize that. The 7th was thunderstorms of hail and fire. The 8th was locusts. Now, we've had experience a little bit with locusts. We know what that's like. The 9th one I thought was quite interesting. It was total darkness for 3 days. And I thought, how could I get the people at the church to understand what that really meant? Because I don't think we can. And I thought, tell everybody to close their eyes and just sit there for a minute. You can't see anything. Now, there were 3 days of total darkness where you couldn't see anything. And then the 10th was the most severe of all. Each plague kept getting a little worse. And this right here also put the Israelites to a test. The last one was the death of the firstborn. Now, here's what God told Moses. See, he not only was going to put this on Egypt, he was giving orders to the children of Israel to see if they were going to be obedient. He said, you go tell the children of Israel that they need to take blood and they need to put it on the post around the outside of the door. Because tonight at midnight, the death angel is going to pass through. And when the death angel passes through any home that does not have the blood above the post or around the post, the firstborn will die. The firstborn will die. And that didn't mean just little babies. The firstborn in a house where there was parents that maybe had 6 children, that meant the firstborn that was there. But he said, you make sure that blood is over the post. And when the death angel came through, any home in Egypt that did not have the blood over the post, Egyptian or Israelite, the firstborn died. For King Pharaoh, that was his child that died. And then when Moses went to Pharaoh, he said, now, will you let my people go? And Pharaoh said, go. Get out of Egypt. Go. He was so grief-stricken. And first he said, you go, but you leave your cattle, your camels. First he said, you leave your wife, your women, and your children, you go. And he said, no. He said, will you leave your camels and your animals? And Moses told him, we will not leave one hoof in Egypt. We're taking it all, and we're going. And Pharaoh said, you go. You go. And sometimes, folks, that lesson to us is when God tells us to get out of an Egypt in our life, or God has taken us out of an Egypt, he don't want us to leave anything there. We need to look at our lives and say, Lord, have I got everything I need to do what you're teaching me to do right now in this situation? Don't leave anything in the Egypt that you're in. What is that, Donna? Don't be doubtful. Don't question God. Just do what he tells you to do. And now I want to get to the main point of the message that I'm trying to get. And that is, you know the story as they went on. Moses led over 600,000 people out of Egypt in the middle of the night. He led them. He didn't leave them. God didn't lead Moses and the Israelites through enemy land. He led them through the desert toward the Red Sea. Now see, God knew what he was doing here. The people didn't, but God did. Because God knew what was fixing to happen behind them. Because see, after Pharaoh's wife got to Pharaoh, and the people had already left, and Moses had took the Israelites and they had left, they began to talk, and she got him all upset, and she said, you need to go get them and kill them. So what did Pharaoh do? What did he do? He took all of his army, and he took off after them. Now where had God told Moses to take them? Through the desert to the Red Sea. You say, why are you telling us that? Because folks, that means from a human standpoint, there's no route of escape. Sometimes God's leading you out of an Egypt that it looks like there's no way of escape in what's going on in your life. But why is he doing that? So we can see God's power and his glory. Stop and think about it. If everything that happened in your life was so easy and so convenient, and you never had to rely on God, let's be honest, how much would we stay one-on-one with God? How much would we depend on him? See, sometimes God has to let us go through these Egypts to remind us that he is our God, he is in control, and we're supposed to have a one-on-one with him. So God led Moses and the children straight toward the Red Sea with nowhere to go. It's the desert of the sea, because he knew Pharaoh was fixing to come after him. And he knew, again, he needed them to see his power and his glory. You ask the question, what has God given us that we can know that God's always with us? You have to do just what Moses did. You have to trust what God tells you to do. Don't question him, folks. Moses did not say, God, why are you taking us through the desert to the Red Sea? He just did what God told him, and he took them. We have to understand, if God has brought us to this point, he will give us the grace to go through whatever we have to go through. And as God told Moses to lead the people to the Red Sea, and he knew that Pharaoh's heart would harden back again and that he was going to head out after him, I'm sure God was saying, good job, Moses. Keep trucking. But then, you have to remember, they were out in the desert, headed toward the Red Sea, and they looked back and they saw the dust. Now, you have to understand, in the desert, you may not be able to see clearly, but you can see a long, long way. And when there's this humongous dust storm, you know something's a-brewing. And they knew. They knew. They were afraid. Here's what they said in Exodus 14. They said to Moses, why did you bring us to the desert to die? Weren't there any graves in Egypt? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? We told you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptian. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die here in the desert. See, that's the way of Christians sometimes. No matter how much God is working to bless them and help them, they want to murmur and complain because it's not going perfect. See, they were excited when Pharaoh said, take them and go. Man, they kicked it in gear and got in their little groups and got away with it, and out of there they went. But now they're in the desert. They know Pharaoh's after them, and now they start murmuring and complaining, blaming Moses. Moses, why did you do that? They didn't say, okay, Moses. And what they should have said was, okay, Moses, God led us. God led us out. Used you to lead us out. Now what does God want us to do now? That's the mentality we need to take. Okay, God, you're bringing me out of this Egypt, or I'm in this Egypt. What do you want me to do now? How do you want me to handle this situation? Moses answered the people. In verse 13 and 14, he said, don't be afraid, stand firm. You will see how the Lord will save you today. Do you see the Egyptians? You'll never see them again. The Lord will fight for you. Just be still. And you know, I told you all some time back when the Lord took Mother home, and I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. And I began to pray and cry and ask God what He wanted with my life. That night, the only scripture God would give me is, be still and know that I am God. Folks, sometimes you need in your life to just be still and know that God is that He is. So quickly, let's look on what happened. Now, this is the part that I had not really focused on at all until I was studying late last night. And I went back 3 times to make sure I was right. And I was, and it's in there if you want to read it. You know, we think that the people and pictures you see show this bright scenery of the people being on the shore. They're looking at the Red Sea. They're seeing the soldiers close in behind them. Moses raises his staff and a wall of water goes up. Well, guess what? It didn't happen quite that way. If you read the story, it was in the dark of the night when this all happened. Well, I'm not even sure, and the Bible doesn't clarify, but in my studies, I'm not even sure the people of Israel really realized what it looked like when Moses raised his staff in the water. And he said, follow me, walk through on dry ground. And when he said that, I'm not sure they ever truly got a concept of what that looked like. Because there was a pillar of the light to guide them, but it was not daylight, folks. It was black dark when God took them through. There again, and the thought come to me, God, why did you do it that way?